and welcome to Cinema Therapy. We're just going to fix that audio real quick because I sound like I'm in the wind. It's like a Kanye. Space. It's like a Kanye track.
God. And I always find.
Let's not get sued.
You're good, actually. It's just nipples. We're good.
Oh.
We're patched.
I patched.
That's it, Nicole. Everything is intellectual property.
True. Hello and welcome to Cinema Therapy, the podcast for people who know nothing about life but know all about film and TV. I'm Nicole.
I'm Karen.
Follow us on social media, guys. Follow Cinema Therapy Show so you can know what topics we're going to talk about each week. We're on Instagram and Facebook. We want to starting some Facebook commentary because I know that we incite a lot of debate. Sometimes people feel like I'm a little too harsh on some TV shows. I don't know who these people are, but maybe. And, you know, some people think that Karen is... a little.
What did they say, Nicole?
I don't know. They might have some comments about you. I'm not going to speak for other people, but you know, we want you to have an opportunity to say all the things you want to say, and because we can't have you all on Cinema Therapy each week, we'd like you to comment. Por favor.
I will say this: people love your voice.
My voice?
Yes, they think it's very relaxing and soothing, and they don't like mine. And I don't care, okay?
Look, Asian Fran Drescher has a brand, okay? Like, some people are not going to buy the brand. That's cool. It's not for them. It's for the people who are like, that voice is interesting.
It's a balance. It's a good balance that we have.
Yeah, agreed. Apparently, it's smooth and then...
Sade vibes. That's what I get.
I love that.
You're welcome.
That's the best thing I've ever heard.
You're welcome.
I'm trying to like take compliments too
Growth.
much, but like I like that one. That's cute. That's a cute compliment. Anyway, so let's talk about our little summary for the show, and then we'll talk about us a little bit and introduce our guests. So we're going to talk about Jordan Peele's career, guys. We saw Us a couple weeks ago, and I'm not one for horror movies, but that did feel like a moment in time, pop culture history. It seems very significant. We were all sharing that, like the shared feeling of what the hell just happened after seeing the film. There's just like, it was so thought-provoking. There's just a lot of like feelings that people needed to parse through after seeing it. So it made me think about Jordan Peele and his kind of like, he's kind of an enigma. Like there's so many things that I think he's really passionate about, but it's kind of crazy to see him in this completely different space than where we had seen him for several years, like from Mad TV to Key and Peele to Keanu to fucking horror slasher film and Us. It's just a crazy journey, and we're excited to look into it.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So that'll be fun. What have you been up to, Karen?
Oh dear. I'm well. It's a new moon in Aries, means new beginnings and letting go.
Okay.
So I'm trying to do that. I honestly hate that my life is like such a novella. The only thing that I talk about are like my pining after like significant others or exes or
but
partners.
No details though.
No details.
It's just like we know that you're
It's
in
all
some
vague.
sort of like angst. Like there's some like.
Well, I will say this:
situation.
we went to a concert. I love you being fun employed. I really am like putting out vibes for you to like, you know, find that job that will make you like very happy and financially more secure. But I just love you being fun employed. It's a lot of fun. It's very comfortable for me, like to have a friend that's like at home and watching Mad Men. And
oh my God.
I don't know. It makes me happy. But because you are in this position, you were able to go with me to this concert.
Yes.
And we had a fun time.
It was amazing.
I really appreciate you being there for me. And it was emotional because I kind of like, okay, so someone in the concert that's playing in the concert is someone that I'm like in this really weird relationship with. And I told them I'm not talking to them right now, or we're not talking right now. And so I kind of felt like a stalker, like just coming and like not saying hi, not telling them that I was there. Mm-hmm. But it's more like a self-preservation kind of thing. Like,
I see.
Like I am out here and I'm living my life, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Does it make sense?
I mean, I'm all about self-preservation.
Yeah,
I do what I think. Well, you know, not talking about my lovely marriage, but when I talk about relationships with my friendships and any time where there's like an exchange of energy, I am very aware of like how much energy is expended in an interaction. And if I feel like there is some sort of imbalance occurring, or if it's just like, sometimes I just feel like some people aren't going to groove with you in a certain time of your life, right? Mm-hmm. Like you might have been really cool 2 years ago and they really understood you then, and then because of shifts in both of your personalities, like things are just not the same. And I don't feel like we need to be just going with like the civility of like, okay, we're gonna act like we're still as friendly as we were in the past. Like if you're just feeling like it's draining you, then you know, I feel like we have to be thoughtful and considerate of like how the other person is feeling.
Of course,
you know, you should be, but you should care about yourself a little bit more.
I've been like on this whole thing about like calling people fuckboys, and it's very, I'm realizing like maybe that's not like it shouldn't be a go-to thing to just like label someone as a fuckboy. You know what I mean? Like people have baggage and whatever. I'm not even going to go into any more details, but last night one of my good friends called me a fuckboy. He's like, stop being a fuckboy, Karen. And I'm like, excuse me, like, wow.
Why did you say that?
Well, because I was kind of saying that I was ghosting someone. But, yeah. And, again, like, you know what I mean? Maybe, yeah.
Are you talking about the same guy?
No, this is someone else.
Oh.
Okay. But you know what? I realized I can be a fuckboy with friends. I have ghosted friends.
We know this.
So, yeah, you know, change, growth. We're all here for it.
This is an ongoing conversation. Well, one day we'll just talk about ghosting entirely, because like
the Halloween episode.
Yes,
it should be ghosting.
Yes, I really want to commit a whole hour to it. I feel like it's a disservice to try to like really explain what's going on with Karen and ghosting in just a 5-minute little increment. So let's just, save that for another time. But know that that's an issue that we're tackling.
It's an issue. How are you? How was your week?
I had a good week. Yeah, it was pretty chill. I'm always applying for jobs. I'm trying to do something more creative. So I have been doing a lot of writing. And
Ooh.
I feel like, speaking of new moon in Aries, I feel like I am returning to a part of myself. Because I feel like I'm getting back to how I felt in 2012. I don't know if that has to do with the Saturn or whatever. I'm not going to get that deep into astrology right now, but I feel like how I felt when I was applying to law school. And I feel like then I wanted to conform to what would make me most successful. And now I think I'm returning to what I think I am. And I'm believing that whatever that will be will make me successful rather than, conforming.
That was such an interesting time in your life. So many things were brewing.
It was. I went through a big breakup. That was my longest relationship, apart from the one that I'm in now. That was it was a lot. And I can't believe it was 7 years ago that I started law school.
Yeah.
It's really strange.
You were really growing. You were really shedding skin and becoming a new person, I feel, from an outsider's perspective.
I was. I feel like I matured a lot.
Yeah.
It took time. I feel like I was one of the older I wasn't even that old. But coming into law school, I was like 23 when a lot of people are 21, 22 coming into law school at Notre Dame. It's like a younger class. And I feel like even though I had these like quote unquote adult experiences, I had like lived with a man for several years. I had worked full time while going to school. I had lived in Miami my whole life, and I feel like I hadn't diversified my experience very much. So, yeah, it was very new and different, and I appreciate that time in my life, and it's cool to look back on it and appreciate that, you know, I'm entering a new phase.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what comes of this.
Yeah, me too. It'll be interesting. Let's introduce our guest.
Oh.
It's so exciting for me because this is the person I love the most.
Oh my goodness. Who is it?
It's my husband, David.
Yay.
David Dorman. Hello, Mr. Dorman.
Hi, and thank you for having me. I'm really excited for this conversation.
Oh my God.
Thank you for being here.
It's so weird to have him on the air with us.
Why?
What?
This is so lovely.
He has one of my favorite voices in the world. Like,
oh.
so it's really cool to see it. Yeah.
I like seeing you guys in your element. It's
gosh.
very interesting.
I was feeling the energy of you like watching us and him being like, wow, look at these ladies in their element. Look at them work. So interesting. I was feeling the watching happening. So what do you think so far?
It's great, and I like to hear, you know, what you guys are up to.
Well, you're participating, so yeah, you're just as involved with the success of the show. So
right, I feel like I'm listening to it on my phone right now. I should
yeah,
get in the game, huh?
You're with us.
Yeah, Dave has been with us since like day one.
Yeah,
you
he
know
was.
What I mean? He had such a presence. I felt like.
Oh, yeah. You know, he was watching us watch When Harry Met Sally for our first episode. He had a lot of comments, as he usually does. David is one of the most opinionated people I know, and that's saying something because I'm the most opinionated person that most people know. So, yeah, he had a lot of comments for us as we were reviewing the film. So it's going to be really exciting. I've wanted David as a guest for a long time. I'm glad that we finally came to an episode that he would appreciate. He's been saying for a while, he's like, yeah, you know, have me on when you start talking about black movies. And
rightfully so. Noted. Absolutely.
Noted. I'll take the note. I was a little hurt about it because I'm like, oh my God, like I feel like he's always coming for my light-skinned ass. But it's okay.
Getting straight to it, huh?
I mean, you know, I try to be as genuine as possible, right? That's what the listeners come here for. So I try to be real. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I felt like the Jordan Peele episode was as good as an episode as any. Mm-hmm. You've been invested in Jordan Peele's career for quite some time.
Indeed. I find him to be hilarious. I find him to be a very smart person, a very creative spirit, and I think we were all super surprised about this entire new side of him that we all saw when he released Get Out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm excited to dive into that. It's been a fun journey to go from, you know, Mad TV to what we have now.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd say you're really one to root for black art. Like, anytime you see, like, something new that has, like, a black-centered cast, you're the first one to be like, I'm going to watch it. I'm going to, like, support it. I'm going to go, like, buy the ticket for the theaters. Like, you're not playing with the, like, let's, like, try to stream and with the, you know, pop-ups and shit. No. He's going to put his money where his mouth is. So.
Yeah, we have to. There's not a lot of space for minorities out there, especially in creative places. But there's been somewhat of a renaissance over the last couple of years in every medium. So I say ride it while it's hot and try to keep it going.
For sure. I think it says so much that, like, with just a few people rising up and creating things that have had such a control of the zeitgeist, like how much that's changed the platform already. And just like the last 4 years, I feel like there has been just like so much more black-centered content, or like other demographics as well, like, you know, looking at Trill, looking at television where like the protagonist is a disabled character. There are just like so many more stories being told, and I think it is because like a few people have like been able to push their story forward, and people are realizing like if you create something that's unique that hasn't been a story that we might have heard like 20 times before, people are more likely to purchase it and give into it. So
absolutely, yeah, people are starting to give the audience a lot more credit. I feel like before it was like, oh, it's not going to be commercially viable unless every movie reflects the majority of America. But they're realizing that as things get more creative and we see more and more different people and different experiences, people love it and they make tons of money. And that always talks.
People are curious. Like, I don't think people want the same things over and over.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I feel like most moviegoers are people of color, like in the audience. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that those are the people that are giving the money to this industry, but their stories are not reflected as much. But until now, so it's an exciting.
Yeah, I think that they realized that there is this buying power finally, but it took too long. So Jordan Peele, he started at Second City. And that actually means a lot to me. Second City is this comedy club in Chicago, and it's where the art of improv became an art form, really. Like, it was at that theater that they decided, like, let's make this something that we could teach other people, and not just, like, a way to, like, practice before acting. Maybe it could be an art form in itself. So it has a lot of historical importance in Chicago. I actually took a class there. A class in screenwriting.
Do we know who started Second City?
I believe it was 2 people, but I don't recall their names right now.
Cool. That's really interesting. I didn't know that. I didn't know it started in Chicago.
It did. So, it's about, so like Chicago is called the Second City, and people used to say, or a lot of people think it's because New York is like the number 1 city and then Chicago's like number 2 or whatever, but it's really because Chicago burned down in the late 1800s, and then like they had to rebuild the city in a sense because most of it was burnt, so that's why it has the name Second City.
Oh, okay. Very interesting.
I'm giving this whole lecture to Karen right now, and I felt like her eyes just rolled back. It's like, you told me too many details I didn't care about.
I legit didn't know that either.
No, I do care about that. I am so ignorant about Chicago, honestly, and I'm just so, like, obsessed with New York. There's no other city like in my mind, so I love that you're telling me about this.
I know that there's no other city in your mind because I lived in Chicago for like 3 years, almost 4 years, and this girl would not visit me. The only time she visited me,
I was
broke,
for my Nicole wedding. Okay, I was a broke woman.
You went
in
to
my
other
early
places.
20s. Miami home.
You went to other places.
Here we go.
Chicago.
What is this episode about, really?
So in Second City, Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele actually met Keegan-Michael Key at Second City. Learned this in an interview of his. They watched each other perform. Jordan Peele was on a switch from an Amsterdam company where he was doing improv there. He was visiting Chicago, performing at Second City. He sees Keegan-Michael Key perform. He's like, oh, this guy's amazing. Like that kind of feel of like, oh, look at the other like black guy here. Like, how's he doing? And he's great. Like, just, very much impressed by his talent. And then the same thing, reportedly happens to Jordan Peele, where Keegan-Michael Key is watching him perform. Is like, oh, look at him. He's really great. So they end up, like, going out to eat after and, like, for 7 hours talk about comedy. And they just, like, clicked really quickly.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really cute story.
That's like serendipity, I feel. They have such chemistry.
They do.
They're so natural with each other.
They are. They just feel like it's just weird that they didn't grow up together or something.
Right.
I feel like that comes from their having a shared racial identity, both being biracial. It's something that they confront in their first episode of Key and Peele. So I think it's central to how they approach their art. It's definitely not their only feature, but it's something that they have in common. So yeah, and I think it's interesting that, you know, after doing Second City, they both audition for Mad TV, and the thought was that spot would go to one of them because Ari Spears is already on the show. They already have, I think, 2 other black actors on the show, so they're thinking they're not going to hire another black actor. That's crazy. Quality.
That's the quota. Yeah, that's
right. I mean, but that's the thought that they're thinking, like, there's no way they could hire 2 black people at the same time.
2 black men.
Yes,
you know?
exactly. Like, it's just like, it's crazy. So they are impressed with their chemistry and their comedic abilities, so they hire both of them. So good for Mad TV.
Yeah.
At their height, they were like, I think there was 4 black people versus like 13. Like the whole cast was like 13 people, and that's a pretty good.
And they actually got on screen, which is
Right.
something Saturday Night Live cannot say.
Right.
Oh.
I feel like Saturday Night Live is only putting black actors on screen when they're like,
black
we
character.
have to, like we have to do a impersonation of Barack
Right.
Obama or Michelle Obama, whatever. Like, it's really ridiculous.
Yeah.
How few like black sketches end up on the show.
They just don't want to do blackface. That's why they have black actors.
That's fair.
Oh my god.
I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Real,
That's
though.
not true.
But it is real. It's
Yeah.
like every time I feel like every time they have a black character, like, oh, thank God we hired somebody
Right.
the other day who could play this character.
Right.
And then they're gone for the 4 episodes. But
Man.
I wonder, I mean, that's off topic. Anyway, so, yeah, it was really fun watching old episodes of Mad TV because, like, I was a huge fan of Mad TV growing up, but I don't recall, like, Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael Key in my mind.
Either, yeah.
Like, their faces didn't come up for me, but, like, looking through YouTube and seeing their old clips, like, you see that, that comedic talent, but you don't see, like, how much it's going to grow, right? I feel like this is just, like, the beginning of little sparks of genius. What did you think watching the clips?
the Mad TV clips,
Yeah.
I thought similarly. I was like, it's really weird to see how far back this goes and to see them sort of at the beginning of the relationship and how that was coming together. But yeah, I definitely couldn't predict where they would end up. Mm-hmm. And I always saw, I really did enjoy Mad TV as a kid. I always saw it as kind of like the alternative to Saturday Night Live. Like, it was way sillier. People didn't think it was as prestigious, but I thought they hit more poignant points. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then some, the misses might have been a little bit more than the SNL misses, but I thought, when they really swung for the fences, they could be more provocative than the SNL cast.
For sure. I think it was probably best that Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele be on Mad TV versus SNL. Because SNL feels a little more of like, oh, we're going to please the largest amount of people. I think for the comedy being done in that era, it was probably like the boldest comedy they could find on television. If they were just like trying to like, sharpen their skills and make a name for themselves, like that's the training ground where they can approach topics that are not necessarily like as sanitized as you see in SNL these days. And yeah, like they did talk about race quite a bit in these sketches. There was a couple that I thought were pretty noteworthy. There was one where they were like, it was like a black and white, like those old like 1950s training videos, like, oh, marijuana, and here are like all the things about marijuana. Like in this case, it was like Our New Neighbor, where they're teaching a white family what to do when black neighbors come up to their door, and it tackles racism through a comedic lens. One of my this is a funny line to me, but when they come up to the door, the white family's like, it's the lady from the pancake box.
Oh my
And
God.
she brought the man from the rice box. And then they're like, 2 more people come in. It's Jordan Peele and Keegan-Michael Key. And the lady's like, which box are you from? And they're like, we're not from a box at all. We're real live Negroes.
And you could never have that on SNL.
No, they would
Like,
not do
yeah.
it. They're not like they're just not as courageous.
They also couldn't because there were 5 black people in that sketch on Mad TV.
Right.
And
True.
They couldn't staff that sketch.
No, that was
need
a
to stop
comment
hating
when
on
I
SNL.
watched the video on YouTube. That was the first comment. It's like SNL couldn't do it today.
Right.
Like they have like max 2 black characters. And usually like 1 is a feature character. So
Yeah.
anyway, there was another one that was a parody of To Catch a Predator. And Jordan Peele, he plays Melvin Dufresne. And he admits that Chris Hansen, played by Michael McDonald, he says that he's here for underage sex. And it's it's this really dark sense of humor that you get to see more of in Key and Peele. But it's really... they could not get away with this joke now, I don't think. Like, it's... I think to even have To Catch a Predator on now, like, it's not something that people want to watch now that we have, like, so many accounts of sexual assault stories. But, like, looking back at it, it's like, wow, Jordan Peele was really playing this, like, dumb guy who's just like, I mean, I just wanted to have sex with a 16-year-old. I don't understand what the problem is.
I mean, it's very brave of them. Like, they don't really have a filter.
They don't, yeah.
And I feel like that continues on, like, throughout their career, like, with what they're doing now. Like, there's no filter, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Where are you watching these clips? Because I feel like we can't watch reruns of Mad TV anywhere right
YouTube.
now.
And I think you can actually get the seasons on YouTube because there were commercials that, like, you can buy season 13 and watch it on YouTube. I wasn't going to go that far. I did find all the clips that I wanted to find. So that was, I was pretty pleased with everything I got on YouTube. Thanks, YouTube.
Yeah.
Kind of Google commercial.
Because you can literally see every single episode from SNL, like, from the first season online. Stream it easily. But
I used to watch those.
Not with Mad TV.
But Miss Mad TV. So Key and Peele, 2012 through 2016, they did an amazing show. I love this show so much, guys. Like, it's the best. Dave, do you have any favorite moments from Key and Peele?
From the show?
Yeah.
A couple. I really liked I guess I'm just going to wrap off random skits. The skits where Keegan plays the teacher that comes from the hood to a white school.
Yes.
And he can't pronounce
with
anybody's names.
Yes.
And they're like, and they just sort of give up. Yeah, no, that's excellent because it sort of subverts that whole idea that, like, oh, white people love to say black people's names are ridiculous. And it's like, no, your names are just as ridiculous.
Right.
We just hear them more often.
Exactly.
Like, let's not...
Like, we learned how to say your name. We had to because we were surrounded by you. I love that one. That's such a good one.
It's a great episode. Yeah.
How about you, Karen?
My ultimate favorite one is the Family Matters skit. When the actor who plays Carl, who's played by Jordan Peele, goes to the writers or the director agent and is like, I'm an actor. I'm a real actor. I want more serious work in this show. Like, this is a show about family. And then the agent's like, no, Jaleel White, the guy who plays Urkel, like, he's in charge. This is Steve Urkel's show. And then for me, it was like one of the first times that we really seen like the sinister side of like their humor, because it gets very dark very quickly. Steve Urkel ends up like, I don't know, like he plays like this like mind game with them where he forces them to kill themselves and like it gets and like shoot themselves in the head, and it's just really fucked up. And he's like, "This is my show," and then it's like, and then it ends with like Family Matters continued for 6 more seasons.
Oh my god!
And it's just so good, and it was so sinister and dark, and like. I think like that, like their dark sense of humor is what really brought me into the show, or like interested in them and their writing and comedic skills.
Yeah, they really take it as far as they can. Like in the beginning, I feel like I always like the initial premise. I always think it's really clever, and then they take it to a point where I get really uncomfortable, and I'm like, oh wow,
they love making you uncomfortable.
Exactly. Like we're not gonna give you what you want, Nicole. Like I think like, oh, they're serving me right now. Like they know what Nicole likes, and then you're like, haha, we gotcha. We're gonna fuck with your head a little bit. There's a couple episodes that make me think of that. There's one where okay, so it's Keegan Michael Key. He's playing, is it Helen? Jordan Peele is Megan. This is before she becomes Megan. She's Megan, and then he is, what's his name in the show? I don't know. He's another girl, but like they're doing like the same like Valley Girl thing of like, oh my god, like everything is so cute and it's so adorable, blah blah blah. So you think it's like this normal parody. Like they go and see this dog in the window and they're like, oh my god, it's the cutest dog I've ever seen. And he's like, oh, it's so amazing. Like, and you know how people are, like they're like, oh, I just want to bite off his little foot, it's so cute, blah blah blah. He's like, I just want to take it to the veterinarian and put him down. Like, really like, whoa. It's like, I just want to I want to bury him, and then I want to take his ashes, and like just crazy shit. And then he's like, let's buy the dog, yay! And then they're like burying whatever. They like presumably the dog, and then they start walking, and you're like, oh my god, it was the cutest dog ever. And then you see all these little dog burial plots, and you're like, oh my god, they've done this forever. They've been buying dogs for millennia and just killing them. Like, it's just a perfect horror movie tribute. It feels very familiar.
Yeah. What I love about like the structure of the show is like they always start out with kind of like a conversation between the two of them, and it's always bringing up a point, like a political or social point. Like for example, with the whole Family Matters thing, before that, they were talking about how they were two black men in Hollywood that were not getting enough roles, like that always had to play like the same kind of roles, you know, or like getting auditions for like the best friend or the slave, you know what I mean? And how they wanted to have more power in Hollywood against like producers and directors. So I think it's like very clever.
In talking about structure, I definitely think it's important to think about what happened before Key and Peele, because I know although it was a while after, the show started in the wake of Dave Chappelle's show ending and Dave Chappelle leaving, and I think that really set the scene for this kind of black sketch show where we're dealing with actual issues and real issues in a hilarious way. And I definitely, at some point, Dave Chappelle made a comment like, I turned on the TV and they were doing my show. Right. But I don't even necessarily think it was a hateful comment. I think, that's real. You set the scene so that they could do it. So they could do something cool. And he had the same sort of format where he would get up on stage and tell a few jokes and introduce a sketch along the same theme, so that people had a context for it.
Yeah, and I do like having two black actors, two black comedians having these opportunities to explore, issues with masculinity, issues with friendships between black men. Like, these are not things that we get to talk about or see a lot in the media. And I feel like through comedy, they're able to examine a lot of, like, distinctive relationships that feel very familiar. Like, you know, how they one-up each other about, the freshness of their cap. There's a scene where Jordan Peele is like taking every girl that Keegan-Michael Key has an interest in. Like, every time he's like, oh man, she's cute, he's right next to her. If there was like a girl in a magazine he masturbated to, like if she's gone, like he's right with her in the magazine. Like just like they take it to an extreme, but it feels kind of familiar. It's like, I've seen that issue before, but I've not really seen it portrayed in the media, so it's kind of cool. Yeah.
They're also just incredibly great actors. Yeah. Like, they're very good at impressions, very good at manipulating their voice. It's like they have this whole package of being like strong writers, having strong chemistry, and like very strong performers. Yeah.
That's so true, and
Yeah.
especially with Jordan Peele, I worry that because he's had so much success as a director, I'm never gonna see him acting again. But I remember seeing his sketches, whether he be Megan, whether he be some goth vampire, whether he be Barack Obama, and I'm like, he is so good at transforming himself into something completely different.
Yeah.
I want to see him in a real movie,
Right.
where a serious movie where I've never actually seen him in one.
Yeah.
So that'd be great.
We might not so I saw this interview he did. It wasn't really an interview. It was a lecture he did at UCLA, and one of the students filmed it. And they were asking, well, you explore racism and other issues in your film through a horror movie genre. Why don't you think about drama? Why was it something that you wanted to explore in that genre? And he said generally it kind of bores him, drama. It's just not a genre that he really connects to. Horror, on another hand, is something that he has always really enjoyed, and he thinks it's more fascinating to look at life's problems through that lens rather than in a drama sense. So maybe we'll I would like to see him in that sort of role, and maybe at some point I don't think we should ever discount an opportunity forever. You never know who Jordan Peele might be in 10 years,
right.
But just based on his comment.
Absolutely, and that's more true for Jordan Peele than it is for more people.
Right, because he's shown that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that he can do so many different things. So let's talk about what they did after they decided Key and Peele was to be no more. They were going to move on to something new. That was Keanu. Came out in 2016, written by Jordan Peele and Alex Rubens. This is a movie, guys, when an LA drug kingpin's kitten unexpectedly enters the life of two cousins. They must go through gangs, hitmen, and drug dealers who claim him in order to get him back. If that's not the craziest logline you've ever heard, I don't know what. It's pretty insane. It really says something about how much we believed in Keegan-Michael Key and Jordan Peele's talent to be we will see this movie about a kitten that people are obsessed with.
Right. I would never in my life see that movie if it was
anyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment.
What did you think? You watched it today?
Yeah, it was my first time watching it. To be honest, I didn't watch it when it came out.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really happy that I watched it. It came out 2 years ago, and usually I find with comedies, they get dated very quickly, and the humor is not as strong as it was when it came out, or even as relevant. But it was still extremely funny to me and hilarious, and it lives up to all the hype. I loved it. That cat is so cute. But
it was just a normal kitten.
It was a cute kitten.
It was a normal kitten. Every kitten
is cute. Yeah, but also, all right, fine. I mean,
I like the kid.
No, she didn't. I'm just
let her live.
I'm sorry.
Listen.
You can have your opinion. I'm just saying, with the premise of the film, I'm just but every kitten is cute.
This is challenging you on that.
I know, right? Just heartless.
Sweating.
What? I love cats. I'm just saying they're all great. Why Keanu?
Oh my god. Well, I feel like they didn't. I'm not even going to get into it because it seemed really like a real kitten. It wasn't some kind of CGI kind of thing.
They had multiple kittens play that kitten.
Really?
Yeah. And apparently Tiffany Haddish took home one of the kittens.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
You see, what a great story.
Huh. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Do you pronounce her name Haddish?
Yeah.
Interesting. That is also something I learned today. Okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. I like the movie in the sense that it's oh, this is funny. I did leave the movie I really hope this isn't it. The two of them y'all could do better than this. I liked it, but it did seem a little silly. You could go on, and that could very well be the movie that defines your career. Just a slapstick comedy that's good and makes you laugh here and there, but isn't necessarily say anything else completely. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it definitely wasn't deep,
Yeah.
comparing it to like Get Out or Us, there's so much to unpack. Keanu is definitely much more of a silly adventure. It's very plot heavy. A lot of things happen. This is just from my memory. I remember just like feeling like, whoa, this is a roller coaster ride. But I also feel like it was really fearless in how it approached comedy. It wasn't like, it was coming with a sort of trust in the audience. Like, the audience is going to figure it out. They're going to have a good time. Like, we don't need to like dumb this down for them. So I appreciated that, but I do think it is representative of like where they were at that time, of like just having done a sketch show and trying to like convert that into like an actual film, like bringing some of the energy they have as a comedic team, but like creating something that can be consumed in like a 90-minute period. I think it's a hard jump to do, especially when you've been used to trying to create comedy in a pretty small amount of time. It's hard to like stretch out that plot and make it something that people will appreciate. It's just a difficult task. So I appreciate that like it wasn't an easy transition. I do see like there was some struggle there, and still it was fun for me to enjoy it. It just wasn't like the best comedic film it could have possibly been. I guess.
I always wonder, but I've never actually looked it up. Is this a movie where they thought of this and they're like, we have to do this movie initially, and then they did this movie? Or is this a movie where they're like trying to pitch to the studios, like to get a studio to pick up a movie that they wanted to do, and like they had to keep getting sillier and sillier for the Key and Peele name to be a brand that they could stick on it? I don't know which one it was, but
I'm actually not sure. I was watching their interview, like the Hot Wings interview, because I remember that's how I learned
so good. Yeah.
about the film. Excuse me. And I remember that they were going through the concept a little bit, and it just seemed like they were spitballing. Like, it just seemed like, let's do something fun. Like, they wanted to have like this like new project, but I can't not say for sure.
Yeah. Love that Hot Wings interview. But like on that note, I just think it's admirable anyway, and it's like nice to be a witness to two people who are collaborators, who are partners, just doing what they want to do, just like enjoying like being like creating together, and like it's just admirable. Like both of them, they were the executive producers of it. Jordan Peele co-wrote the story. You know what I mean? Like, it's like they had their hands on this project, and like it didn't have to be anything. Like, it's nice that it didn't have to be anything like this like grand masterpiece to be made. Like, you know what I mean? Like they had like the support and the funding to get this done. Yeah. And watching it, it's nice because you see, it's just like you just see their chemistry again. Like they're just so funny, and like I feel like a lot of it was probably improv, like improvisational, like their scenes, because they're just like going off of each other. Yeah, it's nice to see.
That's a really, really great point, especially if it's the first option that I mentioned, whereby they had complete creative freedom and they just brought together something that they thought was great, and it's like it doesn't have a particular deep meaning, but we think this is funny and cool and that people should see it. And if they got that opportunity to make a movie like that, that's dope. That doesn't happen very often, especially for two black guys trying to make a movie. So that's really cool.
Yeah. Let's talk about Get Out, guys. This is another film I saw with you, babe. Do you remember like how we decided to watch it? I feel like when we learned Jordan Peele was making both films, you're like, you don't have a choice as to whether you want to watch it or not. You're going to watch it. So
yeah, I don't remember exactly how, but I do remember seeing the trailer and being like, oh my God, like, what is this about? Is this a joke? This might be a joke. Is this trailer real, or is it just like something that's not going to ever come out in the theater? And then I remember as it started like getting more and more steam, I do remember pressuring like, we have to go see this.
That's true. I do remember how they marketed the film, and like there was that sort of surprise. Like people weren't sure what they were going to see. Like, is it going to be a horror film? Is it suspense? Is it a comedy? Like people were very intrigued by like what this was going to be, especially knowing Jordan Peele's name was attached. It's like, it has to be a comedy, right? He's doing a horror movie. Like, it was a it definitely pulled me in. I love this film, guys. It's very suspenseful. They really do like get me from the beginning, because there's just so many microaggressions that are happening that feel extremely familiar. And they just continue to build up throughout the film. Like, there's just, like, all this build up, and you're feeling like the other shoe has to drop, you know? Like, the name of the movie's Get Out. At some point, someone's getting out of somewhere, right? Like, it's someone's gonna get that warning. So it was a wild ride. It was insane. And I feel like it was really tight in its symbolism. It was very clear what it was trying to get at. There was definitely a mission to the movie. And it was able to, you know, give that message without being, I don't know, lecturing or being burdensome and providing that message. It just rang true. And I feel like it was the best way of explaining how those little microaggressions can build into like a hostile environment for people of color. You guys are just like nodding at me, and
I'm with you. You know.
Amen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I think I've watched a lot of horror movies in my day. Now, I'm not like a horror movie aficionado, but I've seen a lot of horror movies, and there are very few that made me think, or spurned, or rather created conversations like Get Out did for me with the people that I watched it with and friends afterwards, or debates that I've had, like I had with people at work and stuff like that. So it was really one of the most intellectual horror movies that I had experienced, and that was a cool aspect of it.
Karen?
Oh dear. I mean, no, I just feel so insecure about talking about my opinions on these movies.
Why?
I don't know.
Because it's a black-centered film.
I'm not black.
That's okay.
I know.
I mean, the critics who are talking about
It's
this
a safe
movie
space.
are mostly white. So
I know.
You can comment on it. There's just like, I think the distinction is if we're talking about like things that black people experience, like you can't speak on what black people experience if you're not black.
Right.
But like otherwise, you know, it's content that he wanted you to view and have opinions on. So
yeah, I mean, I had no idea what to expect when I saw the trailers for this movie either. Like when I dare say, like, when I watched it, I didn't even feel like I was watching a horror film. It
That's
felt
fair.
very much like a comedy still. Like, the whole time, like, I was in a theater full of people laughing. Like, and I get it. Like, I don't know. Get Out for me was like, oh, God. Oh, my God. I'm, like, stressed right now.
You are.
I'm very stressed.
I wish the audience could know how she's just put herself in a disarray. She just pulled her hair from under her headphones like she's sporting this crazed do right now.
I really want to know,
She's
like,
clutching at her eyes.
the
Like,
opinion
what?
now.
Well, that's what Jordan Peele wanted, right? He wanted people to, like, be in this complete mind fuck. I thought it was a very clever, creative way of dealing with racism. I think it brings a lot of, it brings up the topic of, like, what I imagine people go through in their heads, like, when they're facing, like, when they're living day to day in America, and kind of feeling like, is racism still alive? Like, is this really happening? Like, is this racist? And I feel like a lot of people can't express, like, that racism is still alive in America. Does that make sense?
No, it does.
And I feel like this movie was a slap in the face. Like, yes, it's still alive and well today.
For
like,
sure.
Yeah.
I think it was really good at so I agree with you, because I think a lot of times during maybe like the few years right before this movie came out, what, 2017? I feel like much of my time in law school was like trying to parse through the difference between, like, you know, overt racism and that subtle racism. Because people, whenever you would address something, is like, oh, you made me feel uncomfortable. Well, they're like, well, that wasn't my intent. That's not what I was trying to do. And this speaks to how you might not have this, like, malicious intent specifically. Like, you might not have like this hatred towards black people. It could be malicious in another way. It's like, oh, you know, you long for what you consider genetic gifts. Like, you feel like, oh, they have this like athletic ability that I wish I had, or they have bodies that I wish I had. And then it becomes like this envy that is, you know, it doesn't represent what black people are. Like, we're not just like bodies that you can, you know, pick apart and make what you want. And that our experience is more layered than just like feeling like that people hate us. Like, there's things that are happening that affect our experience from day to day, and like it's still something that we have to endure, and that is its own sort of mini horrors throughout the day. And they kind of project it in a way that's like, you know, fantastical and much more cinematic, but it rings very true. I also think they do a really good job of showing. This is something that I also see in the first episode of Twilight Zone. Okay, so bring. Okay, so in the Twilight Zone, one of the concepts he's talking about is this like energy exchange, and understanding that, like, you know, people are going to buy like whatever energy you want to give them, but you kind of have to be cautious because people are ready to like take all of that from you and you can't get it back. That's a concept I feel like you see in Get Out, because he, the main character, Chris Washington, feels like he wants to like feel his connection with his girlfriend's mother. So he talks about his trauma with her, and then she uses that to manipulate him later. And I think that's a lesson for all of us of like, you know, don't tell your story to everyone, that there are those evil eyes out there that are ready to like manipulate you based on like knowing a very like you know, intimate part of your life. I feel like this is a theme that I see come up in his work a lot, of like the idea of like there's an extension or energy that you're giving out into the world, and people can like twist that for their own purpose if they wish.
That's real. I think that's absolutely the point there. I think there's even more of a... So you mentioned earlier about not feeling like it was really a horror film, or it didn't feel like horror, because the concept that she just described, it's not really like horrific in the sense of like you're not being stabbed or kidnapped or taken away, but there are those moments that he evokes in the film where they just sort of gnaw away at you, and so that act that she using his part of the story as almost a weapon, as his traumatic experience to take hold of him, that's some scary shit.
Absolutely.
It has you like, and you're like you're not like jumping out of your seat, but you go to sleep, you're like, that was fucked up.
Right.
Absolutely.
It like entered the concept of being in the sunken place into our lexicon, because it is something that I feel like we have seen. We've seen that like lost black person. It's like, you don't get it anymore, do you? You don't understand the experience anymore. Who got to you? Like who whitewashed you? Like something happened. I think like that sunken place is like, okay, we get that now. Like we know like giving a name to it just like made it feel more real in our like shared experience.
That you were hypnotized or to some degree, or spent too much time. It's interesting because when I think of the main character, you said it was Chris Washington. When I think of the main character's experience, and when he saw like Lakeith Stanfield when he's in this space, like white space, I think of what a lot of black people or minorities in general probably feel when they're in white spaces that they're unfamiliar with, where it's like you're having these conversations, you're talking to people, you're at this party, you're at this it was like a barbecue or some sort of cookout, and you're having these conversations and everybody's having a good time, and somewhere in the back of your mind you have not a suspicion, but you have this like, not threat level, like I don't know what they're thinking of me, but like You're thinking about what is this person actually thinking behind the pleasantries, behind everything else. Do they have any assumptions? Is there something that I should be worried about in the conversations that I'm having? In this case, when it comes to Get Out, there indeed was. There's something super sinister. That's not always the case. Sometimes no, it's just. But, like, you have to live with that regardless. You're thinking in your mind, are these people judging me immediately? Do they think, I'm here because I'm, somebody's adopted son? Or do they think I'm here because I was rescued from the hood? Or, like, what do they think of me? I don't know. And I don't think that, everybody has to think that way. It's, yeah.
And I also feel like people... live like that where they don't want to jump to conclusions. They don't want to assume like the worst. Like they're like, okay, I'm going to be cool. Like it's in my head. Like it's not really happening, but it's true. Like, yeah, you were right about all your suspicions. Like, you know what I mean? And even it's even worse than you even thought. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So yeah, it's very clever in bringing that up. And like, having the audience go through the perspective of the protagonist. So
yeah,
I appreciate it.
We were stressed out along with him, and when he wins out in the end, we were feeling that win too. Ooh.
Right. I wish there was more of a build up with that though. Like I wish there was more of a fight. I mean, like I don't know, maybe this is like the bad, like me being a bad person, but like I would have like loved to see more suffering like of the family, or like fighting with the family. I feel like they died too quickly.
I was very happy with the way that they died.
To be honest, I was just happy that he
got out.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Like, I know, that's the point.
But I get what you're saying. Like a little more, and we got that in us, which we could talk about when we get to it. But there was a point. I don't know. That growing up, and I'm sure you guys felt the same way, seeing the black character in a horror movie die every fucking time takes a toll. I remember when I saw Deep Blue Sea, not a good movie, but you would have thought after I was like, they should get the Oscar. LL Cool J is chilling. He's good. Like, we like damn near threw a party. We're like, he's alive. Like, every day you have to see, the black person die silly, like, because for some dumb shit. But like Get Out, he was just like, no, that's not gonna happen. Right. Like you think it's gonna happen, but like, nah, he makes it. And it's just a sigh of
yes, I felt so good walking out of the theater, and that was really nice because I feel like with so many thrillers and horror movies, I just like suffering, stress, and like I already feel stress. Like it was cool to like get a little bit of that anxiety and then have that release at the end. It was a shared like therapeutic experience. I think. Okay, let's move on to us. Yeah.
I think so.
Please,
let's do it.
Please.
Okay, so Karen, you have a lot of feelings about us. I'll let you talk about
come on now. Let's hear what you have to say.
Girl,
you had a very strong reaction to
just
us.
Talk.
I loved us. I thought I was so much more invested in it. As like just someone who enjoys horror films, like this was definitely a horror film for me. Like it was okay. I'm just gonna like read off of my notes because I wrote a lot.
You did. I know you have a lot of feelings.
Okay, so it's very clear that Jordan Peele has like an affinity and reverence for horror films, and it's like, yeah. Okay, I want to talk about why we think Jordan Peele has gotten so much attention as this modern horror filmmaker when there's so many other like great masters of that genre out now. Like what is it that draws you to him?
So me myself, like I generally am not attracted to horror films because like my experience, especially like when I was seeing horror films in high school, I felt like it was a forced group experience. It's like everyone is doing it together because we want to see each other be scared, and like that's supposedly fun. I've never thought that was fun. I don't like being scared. And then I think like if you're not a person who enjoys seeing people be killed or be chased or having those like moments, then there's not much for you. I know that there are exceptions to this, and probably like the greatest films in the genre like, let's say, I don't know, give me some films.
Horror film?
Yeah, they're good. The Exorcist.
Scream.
Okay. I just feel like
that's a hard test. Name some horror films. That's difficult, but continue.
No. I'm a tough bitch, okay? Like, bitch, give me some movies. No, anyway. So, those are films where I feel like there are other themes that are interesting about them, but I feel like it's so all-encompassing, this, like, feeling of fear that, like, that's all I'm thinking about. I think with these movies, like, there was a promise of something else, you know, underlying, like, this sort of anxiety or fear that you might be experiencing that made me feel like, okay, I'm going to be getting something else from this. And I was fully prepared because he's like, this is a slasher movie. This is a horror movie. Like, don't think you're not going to be scared. So I was ready. I was very stressed out about seeing this film. And then I watched it, and I thought I was going to be like how I was when I saw, like, what's that ghost movie?
What ghost movie?
Paranormal
whatever.
Activity?
Yes, Paranormal Activity. I had my head between my legs the entire time. Like, and when I see when I go to haunted houses, I'm the same way. But with this one, I was actually, like, very invested in the characters. I really wanted to know what would happen to them. It got me thinking a lot. I was just like, when there was a twist at the end, I didn't really buy it. So I was having a hard time dealing with that. But to its credit, I was thinking about that film for a while. And that's how I know, like, this is art. This is something that has, like, provoked something in me and is making me, like, you know, deal with something that's, like, you know, unresolved in my life, or something that I have to, like, you know, put time towards. So that's why I'm drawn to him. And of course, like, the fact that he's exploring the Black experience, you know, first with Get Out, which is much more a movie about race than Us is, but still having a Black family, you know, going through this adventure of a horror film, like, that's something that is going to immediately be more interesting to me than seeing a white family do what I've seen white families do many times before.
Right.
That's absolutely the case. I think what you said, a promise of something more, is absolutely how I feel. I feel like just like you mentioned, when you go to another horror movie, you're like, I'm going to be scared. When you hear Jordan Peele's name is connected with a movie, now you're like, there is a promise of something more. Yeah. It won't just be about fear. It'll be about something else, whether it be race, whether it be, you know, the socioeconomic classes in America. Who knows? But we're going to get something else. And I absolutely appreciate that. And his casting is fantastic.
Yeah.
Lupita was incredible throughout that movie. It was basically an action movie, too, seeing her just work her way through all of these tethered, I guess, or through these issues. It was awesome. Yeah,
it's a social thriller, and I think he's creating this canon of, like, just creating making these movies that are social thrillers that leave audiences with a conversation, which is not what a lot of horror films do, which is why I think it stands out, or why he stands out as a filmmaker in particular. I think a huge or essential ingredient to what makes his movies successful are the characters. He tends to cast a lot of comedic actors, which I really appreciate. Even in Get Out, the mother is, like, this well-known Catherine Hahn, I believe that's her name. Very funny woman. And Lakeith Stanfield, like, even the father, Winston Duke in Us, so funny.
He was great.
He was hilarious. Yeah. And I think, you know, when I'm watching a thriller or a horror film, I'm not as invested in the story. I just want to see, like, action and gore. But I'm interested in Us because of the characters, because he really creates these characters with substance and who don't make dumb decisions like a lot of characters do in horror films. What did you think of that ending?
I mean, I don't want to spoil it for everyone, so I probably shouldn't talk about the ending, right?
She is not happy about that.
I guess. I just
don't want to talk about. I think one other quick point is, because you mentioned the father, and I really loved it. I thought he was hilarious, but I appreciated that Jordan Peele was like, listen, he's here for comedic relief, and he gets hurt. Sorry, but he's not. you see a lot of horror movies or action movies where there's a nuclear family and then the husband takes charge and he's like, we're saving the day and we're going to fight off these bad guys. That is not what happens here at all. Right. And I appreciate the hell out of that. It's like, nah, Lupita, this is her game. Like, she's taking this over.
And the kids do pretty well on their own, too. Yeah. Like, they all get into their survival instincts.
Right.
Yeah. It's pretty impressive. Yeah, I think we gotta wrap it up, right?
We gotta wrap it up, even though I really wish we could talk about that ending. But you know what? That's another episode altogether.
Okay, sure. An episode where we just talk about things that people have to have seen already.
Fine. It's been like 3 weeks, though. People should have watched it by now.
I mean, they should have, but I try not to judge people on their lives,
and their financial status.
All right, let's wrap it up. So thank you for tuning into Cinema Therapy Show. Please follow us on social media, Cinema Therapy Show, on Facebook and Instagram. Please rate and review us on iTunes. We're on Google Play. We're going to be on Stitcher. We're going to be everywhere. Find us.
Thank you so much, Dave. You're an amazing guest.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun.
Soon.
Thank you, David, husband.
Thank you, Jade.
Thank you, Jade. Bye, guys.
Bye.